Right. Well, many thanks everyone for staying with us. And I'm introducing the next session. So my name is John Russell. I'm an Associate Dean for Curricula. I'm also an intellectual disability consultant psychiatrist in the southeast of Scotland, working in both Fife as well as in Edinburgh. So we're just going to spend the next part of the session talking about curricula and portfolios, Rosemary indicated previously. The curriculum review project has been going on now for almost 4 years, and there'll be explanation as to why that's been occurring. But I just thought I'd just quickly quote the vision that we had originally going back as to reasons why we wanted to make changes to the curricula, and also in light of the GMC requirements. So in previous talks, I'd said we wanted to create patient-centered, values-based, succinct, sustainable and accessible to all curricula based on that. And also for curricula to be flexible, to ensure capabilities can be enhanced proactively in response to changing demographics, understanding of mental disorders, legislation, service delivery, policies, etc. And also easily adaptable and enhance psychiatry training and psychiatry over the next 10 to 20 years. So with that in mind, we have been working on this for a few years, and trainee involvement has been key. So Ross and Rosemary, Akshay, as well as others have been involved. And again, everyone's help has been hugely appreciated. So a lot of the feedback we've got from trainees is, which it's all very well having the curricula, but what do we need to do to show that we've got the capabilities and we are progressing? So we've produced a new framework. We've not diluted psychiatry. We've not changed psychiatry training. What we have done is restructured the way that you're able to gather evidence of your progress throughout higher training. And we've embedded the curricula into the placement-specific PDPs in the portfolio line, and Ross and Rosemary will discuss a bit this later on. We've also got a Q&A session after this, so please feel free to ask any questions, put questions in the chat, or email the curricula team. So we do appreciate those changes, but your help and feedback is hugely appreciated at this time. So without further ado, I'll just pass over to Ross and Rosemary and Akshay for the rest of the discussions.
Thanks, John. My name's Ross Runciman. I am I've had the privilege of being involved in the curricula for a number of years now, and to work with John and Akshay is indeed a privilege. I'm a general adult and old age trainee in Gloucestershire, and currently acting out as a consultant, which is terrifying. So today we're going to talk about the curricula. Akshay, did you want to introduce yourself before we proceed, or have you already done so?
Yeah, so I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Akshay, Dave, and I am a ST4 old age psychiatry trainee as of about a week ago, and equally terrifying. And yeah, I'm based in Leicester. So like John said, we've been working on this curriculum for maybe nearly on 3 years now, I guess.
I thought we started in 2018, but it's been a good old run. It's been a good old run. So what we plan to do is to do about 10 minutes of slides to start off the conversation. Then, as Rosemary's already kind of popped in the chat, to really have a rich discussion. I said no question is not welcome. It's double negative. All questions are welcome, even those that may seem a small issue. We want to hear about them. We want to explore them. And as said, this whole process over the next 6 months is part of feedback, and it generates feedback which will make the launch for all trainees in August inform what we do for that. So. Liz, did you have the slides ready, or would you like me to share them? I'm happy either way.
They should be up for you now.
Absolutely. So Rosemary, please interject as we go. I apologise for not handing directly over to you, but please do interject as we go. So next slide, please, Liz. So, as you know, we've got all of these ILOs, and they are numerous indeed. Conscious, led by John, was a process of trying to reduce these to make them something that's a little bit more surmountable and a little bit more achievable. Associated with them were 319 competencies. Now, competency is something that obviously you might achieve in a rather binary fashion. So it's you're competent or you're not competent, and that language is going to change going forward, and that's really important. Next slide, please, Liz. So as you can see, the number of ILOs have come down to 9 HLOs. So firstly, a smaller number. Now, they also have associated with them 75 key capabilities. So that language change there. Capabilities are something that can be revisited. I always envisage a double helix and thinking about how you rotate round it and come to a similar position in the same process, but at different points. And so that double helix is what I think of and envisage when I think of a capability rather than a binary competency, as aforementioned. And those 9 HLOs align with the generic professional capabilities from the GMC that describes what all doctors do. Next slide, please. So we can see that these HLOs outlined cover a really wide range, indeed all of what it is to be a doctor. I would gently say, and the way again that I envisage these is when you look at 2.1 to 2.3, but especially us as psychiatrists thinking about 3.1 as well. This is the real core work we undertake as psychiatrists. Now, obviously, there is a mental health lens through which we experience all the rest of it. But you can see reflected in all of these HLOs, those generic professional capabilities of a doctor, and that gives us the much wider view of how we are as a whole profession. So I think this is a real opportunity of aligning us with the rest of our colleagues to show how similar things are, but that real core knowledge is contained in 2.1 to 2.3, as said. Next slide, please. So wonderful John has done an excellent video for 10 minutes. I don't want to cause him to go pink or red, but there's an excellent video that talks more about the curriculum framework, and I really commend that to you to have a look on the curriculum pages where that's more outlined, and obviously you can do that in your own time and come back to it as needed. Next slide. And similarly, what's really important is then to think about what's going to change at the start of your ST4. Apologies, I should start with congratulations. You know, you've come through a big recruitment process, you've got those ST4, and this is a really exciting time. Great. Okay, so I think one of the things to highlight here in terms of the PDP changes at the start of placement. So as before, as you know, you'll sit down with your supervisor. Now you'll have an awareness of what placement you're in, and we urge you to use the example PDP from for that placement. So for example, if you're going to liaison, you would look at the example for liaison in higher training, and you would take that to begin that conversation with your supervisor. We'd expect in that first meeting at the start of the placement in the, you know, this week, next week, that kind of order of things, to be saying, well, these are the learning opportunities. I'm thinking about liaison because where I'm working at the moment, but the consultant might say, well, you're going to have a medical and explained clinic that you want to attend. There's going to be certain days where we go down to the emergency department and meet with the consultants there. That's different learning opportunities as well, and would set out those things. And at that point, you would then go away and start to draft that PDP into your portfolio. Now, on the right-hand side is a hyperlink to a video of that process that we show between myself and head of the specialist advisor for the portfolio there as well. Okay, next slide, please. Then after that you've drafted that, maybe a week or two afterwards, we then advise you come back with your supervisor. You've put the core information in there. You've highlighted what perhaps you're not sure about in the PDP that you've put into your portfolio. And at that juncture, the supervisor that can then tweak things. I think the main things that they might bring out, given they've shared some of that local knowledge of what learning opportunities the placement will have, is around the way in which you'll evidence that. And we heard earlier from John about capturing all that evidence. That's really key for you as a fellow trainee to demonstrate, look, this is what I'm doing, this is what's happening for me. But it's also very key in terms of what the GMC has charged us with doing, that we demonstrate the way in which the trainee is learning all of these different things relating to that particular placement. So they may then ask you to just change some things in the PDP at this point. Now you can again see the hyperlink there to the video. It's only about 4 or 5 minutes long that I recommend that you watch. And also on the same curriculum pages are lots of questions that have been answered for you to use as a resource. Next page, next slide, please. So then going forwards, and I think this will form part of your supervision, initially a little bit more towards the start of the placement. But thereafter, I'd say every couple of weeks, in terms of going to review the PDP, is that you'll sit down and you'll say, how am I getting on with those examples that we've looked at and we've drawn out from your PDP. So you might, for example, focus on that clinical areas that I said to you before, for part of HLO2, and you would draw out at that juncture and say, okay, I'm getting those broad assessments. Are you evidencing that? Have you reflected? And you can then reflect with your supervisor at this point. Again, please look at the video there. What's going to be really crucial is that you're recording that on a regular basis, and it's a jointly held responsibility between you and your clinical supervisor. Okay, next slide, please. So thinking about what's changed about those workplace-based assessments. The capabilities are assessed by the end of year. So for your good selves, it will be supposing what a trainee by the end of ST4 should have the capability to do. So that's really important to think about that. It always got me confused previously, and I'll be honest with my supervisors as well. So really recommend that. Now, this is something I personally find very difficult, but just to really conceptualize and clarify, the workplace-based assessments aren't pass or fail. This is not like RC Psych. You're not there to sit a mini exam. What this means is they're a way of evidencing the way in which you progress through the curriculum. Therefore, getting an approaching standard does not say that you are failing. It is very normal and expected, especially towards the start of the placement, especially towards the start of ST4, to get an approaching standard. That is completely understandable and part of the learning process. And what the GMC again have indicated to us that we need to show how as trainees we're progressing through those capabilities, and that's done by workplace-based assessments which reflect those different levels of attainment thereafter. And gosh, I apologize for the typo, my sloppy typing. The free text fields are all mandatory at the bottom. We really want to encourage supervisors to provide you with meaningful feedback that you can act on and reflect on and work forwards with. Next slide, please. So getting towards the end, and most importantly, your questions, top tips. So as I said, capability is not competencies. It's not just playing with words. It's really helping to reframe the experiences as trainees that we have. The other thing to say, and this has been very common when we did a similar presentation to supervisors, is that we're not expecting every HLO and key capabilities to be covered in every placement. So that worry, well, I can't do ECT and liaison. It doesn't exist, for example, as an arbitrary example. We're not suggesting that. We want to draw out with your supervisor, following that example PDP, the key learning opportunities in that placement, which will cover a range of HLOs and beneath them a range of key capabilities therein. The special interest sessions have been renamed, and that's to really emphasize to everyone about what they're bringing. These aren't optional things. They form part of what we become as we hopefully all transition to be consultants and part of the richness thereafter. So it's just to have that clarity around this. But those special interest sessions, those PPDSs, do need to be incorporated into your PDP and need to reflect beneath them the key capabilities that you're going to develop as a result of that. What I would say, all this work that we're describing here, and all of us on this panel today have tried this, have gone through the process and thought about how much time it takes. This will reap benefits towards the end of your placements. At that point, because of all this effort in monitoring, in reflecting about what's going on and demonstrating how you're progressing through the curricula, it means that that final supervisor's report, which I know has been painful for some, will be enormously shorter and more straightforward and more automated. Final thing to say, and I know I kind of mentioned it before, is that spread of workplace-based assessments is really important through the placement. It's okay if you're getting different marks as you go along. Remember, they're not pass and fail. So next slide. Brilliant. So as said, those curricula pages, which I mentioned, there's an awful lot of information on there. You need to take a bit of time going through them. Really recommend them to them. And all these kind of events, when we have your excellent questions, we take them, the wonderful team in college, then transcribe them and put official and useful answers for you. So all your FAQs make a difference, not just today, but also in terms of what's reflected on that website going forward. Okay, so I think at this point, that's the last slide, isn't it?
It is the last slide.
Rosemary, I've not let you take a breath. Apologies, I'll be quiet now. Rosemary.
Not at all. Thank you, Ross, for that wonderful presentation. I just want to reiterate a couple of things that Ross has said that I think are incredibly important, and I know that we don't always remember lots of things from presentations. So my kind of 3 take-home things are, it is capabilities, not competencies. So you are forever learning. It's not a binary thing. The workplace assessments are changing, so it is that you are capable by the end of the training year. So don't start panicking if you are approaching capability. It's not a problem. It's not going to be a problem at ARC-P. We have spoken to all the trainers and the ARC-P panels. They all know that this is a change. You're not going to suddenly find that they think it's possible. That's not the case. And I promise that won't be happening. And my last point is that it's something different. The PDP is something that's a massive change for everybody. But actually, I think it makes a big change to the way that we see our training and see our portfolio. And it's much less hoop jumping. And I hope that everybody can see that doing this really helps us direct our training in the way that we want to do it and in the way that's going to make us really good consultants.